Hey, whole Bible readers, it is week 27. This is the beginning of the second half. If this whole thing is a hill that goes up and back down, the hill is cresting, and we are going over to the downhill side. So here we go as we continue to read. Now this week we will read, first of all, the book of Lamentations. Lamentations, simply a book of sad poems. These are poems which are attributed to Jeremiah and fit very well with the book of Jeremiah. All of them responses to the siege and fall of Jerusalem. So this word lament is one that we often use to describe parts of the Bible. It's very common, especially in the Old Testament, for people, the people of God, to raise their voice in sadness, in mourning, and call out to God, asking for Him to hear their prayers and to make things right. So lament is both a form of emotional expression. God wants us to be honest with Him. But it's also, I think this is helpful, the Bible Project video, as you watch it, will describe it as a form of protest. It's saying there's something that is wrong with the world. So what's wrong here? Well, what's wrong is that Jerusalem has been destroyed, and that is an act of God's judgment. But there's so much suffering that's happening as a result. And not just to the people who deserve it, but to those who don't. But even more importantly, it seems that the hope of the nation is lost in this. Well, for the first 4 chapters of Lamentations, these are what we call acrostic poems or alphabetical poems, meaning each verse begins with a word that begins with successive letters of the alphabet. So first Aleph, then Beit, then Gimel, then Dalet, the Hebrew alphabet, which has a kind of a rhythm like our own alphabet, doesn't it? Because they're all related in history. So it's almost as if the writer is trying to bring structure to something that's falling apart. Chapter 3 is the midpoint, and it's like 3 times the size. It's a triple acrostic. Instead of 1 verse beginning with each successive letter, you get 3. And so it's adding to this, and maybe the most hopeful parts of the book are found here. As you read that chapter, I think you will hear an echo of a familiar hymn that we sing. Great is your faithfulness, Jeremiah is going to say. If there's hope to be found, and there is, it's not in any of these events, but it is in God's faithfulness that He will still fulfill His promises. Well, chapter 4 goes back to the shorter 22-verse acrostic poem. Chapter 5 has 22 verses, but it's no longer an acrostic. It's like things are just unraveling for the poet. Listen carefully for the deep expression of mourning. Our situation may be different, but we may also feel the conflict within us at what we see in the world and wonder if God is present. This is a good way to think about how we call out to God in that situation. Then we will begin the prophet Ezekiel. And let me tell you, if Ezekiel was one of your neighbors or a member of your family, you would probably stage an intervention. He does some wild stuff. Ezekiel is a contemporary of Jeremiah. He's taken out of Jerusalem by the Babylonians in an early wave when they're depopulating the city but not yet destroying it. And he has a vision at the beginning, at the very point when he would be appointed as a priest if he were back in Jerusalem. He has a vision of God on a chariot throne, and there he is, in His glory, being revealed. But as the book continues, we're going to see God is saying to Ezekiel, I've left the temple because people there have become idolatrous. They are no longer worshiping me there. They're worshiping other gods. They're showing complete disrespect to me, disregard for me. One of the interesting things that Ezekiel will do is a series of prophetic acts. He performs actions that are signs of God's message. It's interesting that when we get to the New Testament, when John the Baptist is dipping people in the Jordan River, that was a prophetic act. That was an act with a message that meant something. So, what are Ezekiel's prophetic acts about? Well, the certainty that God is going to destroy Jerusalem because of the hard-heartedness of the people of Judah. Hard heart is what Moses had said the people in the wilderness had. And now this is what the prophet Ezekiel says his own contemporaries have. But in this section we're going to be reading, we will see how God promises He will give His people a new heart, a heart of flesh. This is His action, not theirs. He is the one who brings judgment, and He is the one who brings redemption. And later, in what we will read beyond this week, we will see how Ezekiel will even speak of a new temple that is coming. Though as he describes it, we see this is no mere physical structure. This is something that ultimately takes in the whole world. Yeah, God is taking his world back. All right, enjoy your reading of Ezekiel. It's a trip, but it's a good trip.